welcome once again to EWTN's Bookmark. I'm Doug Keck, your host. Our special guest author is Shawn Carney. He, along with David B. Wright, has authored 40 Days for Life, published by Capella Books. Great to see you.
Good to see you, Doug.
Nice
How are you?
And of course, I think people would connect right away because of the 40 Days for Life. This has to do with that movement, right?
Yes, yeah, it's going on in hundreds of cities actually right now. And 40 Days for Life started in one city in Texas in 2004,
right.
And since then has spread to over 700 cities around the world.
Now, this is an expanded edition that came out earlier this year from a book that was published originally in 2013, right?
Correct. And, you know, in 2012, we started looking ahead to 2013. That was the 40th anniversary of Roe versus Wade, and we noticed Planned Parenthood and NARAL and the abortion industry was getting ready to celebrate 40 years of abortion, and we thought that's not really the story that needs to be told. We need to tell what's going on, where the abortions actually happen, and tell the story of the pro-life movement. So we did these 40 stories and released it in January of 2013. That was the first edition of the book.
And what's in the expanded edition?
The expanded edition includes all the bonus chapters, a new ending, and some of the behind-the-scenes things that in regards to how 40 Days for Life started. It also includes a new ending of going into what is now our headquarters, the closed Planned Parenthood abortion facility where the campaign started.
Now, the format of the book, it's you and David do different chapters, but you know, you almost expected it to be every other chapter, one you, one him, or something like that, like Bob and Penny Lord might have done in some ways, of great memory. But it isn't. Sometimes it's you several chapters and then a couple by him. How did you determine, A, what chapters you were going to write about, and B, laying that out?
Good question. Well, I'm very long-winded, and so some of my chapters ended up being very long, so they got cut up. And so in the book, 25 chapters are mine and 15 are David's, and we got a lot of feedback on it's a fast-moving book. You know, we say read a chapter a day, but nobody really does that. And it's very high-low emotionally because the diversity of the stories and us taking people through the rapid growth of 40 Days for Life and what God has done through the campaign. So yeah, it's not every other chapter by any means. We sort of speed through. It's a very fast read. And it covers every corner of the abortion issue.
Now, at the very beginning, you got Marjorie Dannenfelser, who's president of Susan B. Anthony List, who we're actually working with on our new Pro-Life Weekly program. She says the fruits of 40 Days for Life are simply invaluable to our cause. Now, why is it invaluable in your mind? What's different about this? Obviously, you know, the March for Life, all these wonderful outreaches have happened over the years with people standing up against abortion. What is different about 40 Days for Life in your mind that has caught the imagination, had the impact, and why it continues to grow?
You can do it where you live. You know, abortions don't happen on the bench of the Supreme Court or in the halls of Congress or in the White House. They happen in very otherwise unassuming neighborhoods where there are businesses and there's churches and there's schools, and there is nested in that environment an abortion facility, and people can go out and they can see a 40 Days for Life campaign. They can sign up for hours. They can take part in it. And therefore, they can take part in the results, which was the motivation of this book, is to share that. You know, what else can you do where you can take an hour or 30 minutes during your week and help save the life of a little baby boy or baby girl? And that's really the story, are these heroes and these saints who courageously lead 40 Days for Life campaigns. But we've had over 800,000 people participate in a 40 Days for Life campaign.
Is that just in the continental United States? Has it expanded out beyond there?
We're in over 40 countries around the world. And so 40 Days for Life has been done in Hong Kong and Moscow, all throughout the United Kingdom. So, you know, people can go. What's different about it is you can go. You can show up, and you can do so in the midst of your busy life, in the midst of trying to raise your kids and grow in holiness yourself. You can be on the front lines of the culture, and that's why it's rooted in prayer, because the front lines can be scary sometimes.
Right. Well, I think you can see I'm looking at the forward where they talk about, does it really make a difference? Are my prayers really working? Which Abby Johnson, very well known now, obviously former Planned Parenthood manager of a facility, who has become a big pro-lifer and also is now Catholic as well, writes the introduction. Now, in reading your book, there's a time you allude to an Abby, and you don't really go into who that is. And I'm thinking, is that the Abby Johnson? And then later on, you explain that, in fact, that was the Abby Johnson. So how did you meet her, and how did you know her?
I started volunteering in the pro-life movement in college, going out and peacefully praying in front of the Planned Parenthood where Abby was volunteering on the other side. And so I actually knew her for 8 years during her time at Planned Parenthood. And she was.
What would a person volunteering, would that be like an escort job they would be kind of doing?
Yeah, Abby was an escort.
Those kind of.
So she got sort of gung ho on the reproductive rights movement in college. She got recruited, and she became an escort. And my wife and I were sidewalk counselors, and so we would walk Abby to her car. We'd talk to her. We formed this relationship with her over 8 years. And I, at the time, was leading a local pro-life organization, the Coalition for Life, and we moved in next door to that Planned Parenthood to offer alternatives. And so Abby and I, we did media interviews against one another's points, and so we knew each other really well. And when she had her moment and saw an ultrasound-guided abortion, she walked right into my office next door.
And what do you think it was in how your relationship was with her that made it easier for her to do that? And how would you see that as recommending the way maybe we should act?
I think it's a reflection on the broader picture of people longing for the church and longing for truth and seeing that there is something different. There's something different about 40 Days for Life, but there's something different about why 40 Days for Life exists, which is Christians are willing to go out and to take time, which is so hard these days, and to pray for a stranger, and a stranger that doesn't want them there.
Right.
And so I think that is really what Abby saw. And she saw habited nuns out there. She saw priests. She saw joyful young people, and who endured heat and
who
rain.
Weren't condemning necessarily, trying to love that person, so to speak, and not this kind of phony straw man that's put up about these people yelling at people.
Exactly. Yeah, the media says we're out there kind of telling people they're going to hell, but
badgering them.
Right. And it's that compassion, and it's that we were approachable. And so not only did God get Abby out of the abortion industry, but He provided somewhere for her to land and go and have help. And so it's a beautiful story, and it shows. Abby's journey didn't stop. She pursued and read and prayed and ended up Catholic. I got to sponsor her husband into the church.
Right. You talk about that in the book. She also writes, today nearly 7,000 babies and counting are alive because of 40 Days for Life. How do you know that, and what do you mean when you say that? How do you come up with those numbers?
Those are numbers that we know of moms who turn around and we know they did not go through with the abortion because they told us, and we can document it. And so we have a much larger number of women that just leave, but we don't know that they chose life. That number is now over, getting close to 14,000 babies that we know of who have been spared from abortion at the very last moment. And a lot of them are in the book. And I've had the joy of meeting some of these kids that are now, in kindergarten and in second grade and in third grade. And, I have 6 kids, and I think with the abortion issue, we think, we're saving a baby, and we are. But we're also saving a second grader and an 8th grader and an old man because these kids are going to grow up and they're going to be moms and dads and grandparents, and that's the impact that participating in the pro-life movement can have.
Right. Now, in the prologue, there's words of life from a deathbed, and you talk about, is it David Arabi?
Arabi. He's Cajun.
Arabi? Okay, the Sheikh of Arabi. So I'll remember him, David Arabi.
There we go.
Now, he talks about the fact that his father was dying. You talk about it in the book. And rather than praying for the father, he said, no, pray with me to end abortion. And he was kind of taken aback. with that whole thing. And that was important to him, and it became a personal thing for him. And he found out later something surprising about his father.
He was, and I want to say he was the Grand Knight of the Knights of Columbus of our chapter, and just was absolutely wonderful. And he couldn't figure out why his dad on his deathbed wanted to just pray a rosary for an end to abortion. And he said, yeah, we need to do that, but we need to pray for you. We need to pray that you get better, that God heals you. And he said, no, I want to just pray for an end to abortion. And he learned on his deathbed, his father communicated to him that his mother was going to go in and have an abortion because his dad wanted him aborted. And he said, because your mother did not listen to me, your father, you're the only person here with me as I lay dying. The one person that I tried to get rid of is the one here with me as I get ready to meet God. And that's why we're going to pray for an end to abortion. And so what David Araby did to honor his father, who passed away weeks before the first ever 40 Days for Life campaign, is he committed to go out and to pray at Planned Parenthood from 11 o'clock at night to 7 a.m. in the morning every single...
He was doing the overnight shift.
He did the overnight shift and called it the night shift with a K for the Knights of Columbus.
What's the wooden table and why was it important to this movement?
Wooden table kind of represents, I think everybody gets to a point where they're just like, what do we do with our culture? And we were sitting around an old wooden table in our office and we saw our abortion numbers going up. We saw our volunteers going down. We saw our donations going down. We saw all those things happening. And we just spent an hour in silent prayer. What can we do? And that's when the time period, 40 days, just occurred. Like, why are we trying to solve all the world's problems over the next 10 years? What if we just take the next 40 days and dedicate that to prayer and fasting, community outreach, peaceful vigil at Planned Parenthood? And that led to the first ever 40 Days for Life campaign.
Now, 40 Days for Life isn't a Catholic, quote-unquote, movement. It's an ecumenical movement, right?
It is. We have Catholics, we have Protestants, we have evangelicals.
So when you think in terms of, and this may be an incorrect perception many Catholics have, but the idea of fasting tends to sound like a more, not that we do it very well, but a Catholic approach to things as opposed to a Protestant approach to things. So how did that fit in when you decided that was the combination you needed?
Yeah, we don't do it very well, but we want to do it. And so it is kind of perceived as that's a Catholic thing. And that was really one of the beautiful things we saw is a lot of evangelicals, Jim Daly, president of Focus on the Family, was one of the early ones along with George Weigel and Michael Novak to endorse the book. And that brought in a lot of evangelicals, and they said, fasting is biblical, but I've never actually done it. I've never committed to do it. Our Lord says some demons can only be driven out by prayer and fasting. And so it became an introduction to fasting. We did a podcast episode on fasting, and it was our most downloaded episode. I mean, people are starving for fasting. And I think that when we deny ourselves, when you go out to an abortion facility, you feel helpless at times, and you'll be tempted to feel hopeless. But when we're denying ourselves chocolate or beer or meat or pasta or whatever it is, we remember our own sinfulness, and that was really the Protestants and the evangelicals who participated in 40 Days for Life saw that as a necessity. Like, you can't go out there full. You can't go out there, content. And so I think that that was a great introduction for a lot of people into fasting, and of course it unifies us as Christians. And an
understanding of sacrificial aspect of things.
Absolutely.
And the power of the sacrifice is, especially when it's united with prayer, right?
Right, and that leads to, as one of my buddies who's a Baptist preacher says, you Catholics aren't as crazy as I once thought. And the pro-life movement is the most ecumenical movement, and 40 Days for Life is about 80 to 85% Catholic. And it was networks like EWTN and you helping us launch 40 Days for Life on our show years ago. Catholic media really helped get 40 Days for Life out there, but the evangelicals that are involved, they have great respect and admiration for Catholicism as we respect and admire them.
What I thought was interesting, it's pray and fast, 24-hour-a-day peaceful vigil. But there's also this other part, which in some parts is harder, which is the community outreach, both the churches and door to door. Now, what is it in your prior life? Was it selling encyclopedias in New Jersey that made you an expert on the concept of going door to door, and was that your idea?
Yeah, only lunatic people go door to door in New Jersey, and I was one of them. I sold encyclopedias, and you're not from New Jersey, you're from New York, and they're very tolerant and compassionate in New York. But I didn't have any money in college. I had to put myself through school, so I sold encyclopedias door to door, and I got sent to New England to the wonderful, hospitable people of Massachusetts. And then my second summer, I was in New Jersey, and that's how I knocking on doors 14 hours a day. So when we did 40 Days for Life, I thought, well, what if we went and knocked on people's doors and just asked them to pray for an end to abortion? And it was amazing. I mean, we had a team of 6 or 7 that volunteered for it, and you can cover a town of 40 or 50,000 people in a couple of weeks. And that was really profound. I talk about in the book knocking on some of the doors of Planned Parenthood staff and some of their board members, not knowing, of course, who was going to answer the door. And even a few of them said, I will pray for an end to abortion. And they looked at me like I was an alien because they were shocked. These people are going door to door to ask people to pray for an abortion. Like, how crazy are they? But there was that dedication. Well,
do you think that impacts on people, even though they might be initially taken aback? There's a certain amount of esteem that's pushed on to say, wow, give them a lot of credit for going out and doing that.
Yeah, it's like the joyful intensity, I mean, everybody loves Mother Teresa, but she demanded so much of herself and the other sisters and of us to get out of our comfort zones, but she did so in joy, and I think Abby recognized that. The abortion facility workers recognize that, and there's joy in what we do. We're not always going to be happy, but we can be joyful.
Right. In the chapter, The Night Shift, you talk about, and here we are in October, Halloween there. Now, you guys got egged.
We did get eggs, and they were not offering egg, like they weren't cooked. We weren't given an omelet. The eggs were thrown at us, and we also had a guy get a coat hanger thrown at him, and it hit him in the head, and there was a note attached that said, "Why don't you adopt them?" And the guy that it hit was adopted himself, which is why he was out there so praying. But yeah, you get all sorts of small, as the saints say, splinters fall from the cross, and if you don't have any, you're not close to it. And so you get these small things done or said to you occasionally. But one of the reasons 40 Days for Life has spread is because it's peaceful, it's law-abiding. We've never had an incident at an abortion facility. Nobody's been arrested. And so it's easy to take part in. And we take safety very seriously. Everybody has to sign a statement of peace. And, it gives people something to do where they live. And the book is the result of that.
Right. You got to talk about the idea that you kind of finish your 40 days and think that may be where we're going. Have we done it? And then after that, in the chapters, it talks about how this expanded out, et cetera, and also how you had no money. And somebody showed up with $50K.
Exactly. It was kind of like this sort of EWTN Mother Angelica type, our version of that. Right. David and I, we launched 40 Days as a national effort in fall of 2007. The only reason we incorporated was for legal reasons. We didn't try to get our 501c3 status or raise money or anything like that, because we were going to do one campaign. Well, the first fall campaign led to a Lent campaign, so we have 2 campaigns per year. But that first Lent, he and I were putting everything on credit cards. We were completely broke personally, and the organization exhausted, no time to raise money, but the demand was there. We got to do another one. So after that spring campaign, we were completely broke, and I remember I was really just praying about what we were supposed to do, and somebody had given me tickets to see Pope Benedict in Yankee Stadium, and my wife and I went up on a pilgrimage and saw the Holy Father, and I just came back and I thought, this just doesn't seem like 40 Days for Life is supposed to end. And I got back, my granny, God rest her soul, was dying in the hospital, so when my plane landed from New York, my mom called, I went up, I prayed the Divine Mercy Chaplet with my granny. She died, and then we got a call saying that there was a donor who wanted to wire us $50,000.
So Grandma was working quickly.
Granny was working quickly.
She was working quickly.
The Irish don't mess around. Even when they're almost dead, they're already working.
They're already working the other side.
They're already working on the other side.
Now, you also say in here in the section, If My People, the abortion industry knows all about despair. It's what abortion survives on. What do you mean?
Nobody grows up wanting an abortion, and nobody grows up wanting to work in the abortion facility. And so when you're in there, it's the loneliest place in the world. Nobody wants to be there when you're in the lobby of an abortion facility, and it's only to fix a problem. There are over 3,000 abortions every single day in the United States, and all of them are sold based on the idea that $450 in a 15-minute surgery will solve your greatest problem. Right. And we see this attack the most on children with disabilities.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, it is shameful what we are doing. It says the worst about us as a society.
And we're seeing more and more of those kinds of
more and more. We're not going
to. As we can get a better idea of a window into the child in the womb. The good part is people are starting to see maybe that it's really a baby.
Yes.
The downside is people can pick up faster through DNA and things like that as to whether there's a defect, quote unquote, in the child.
A defect. If you have Downs, if you're autistic, it's like a target on your back. And 93% of the parents who have the test done on Down syndrome babies, they go through with the abortion.
Meanwhile, those are the most joyful children you'll ever meet in your life.
Exactly. And you'll see a lot of them, the survivors, praying at 40 Days for Life campaigns, and it's a beautiful sight.
Right, exactly. Well, my son's autistic, so I have sympathy for that. What did you do when, and you found out later she was kind of kidding, but Pam said, "Where were you 20 years ago when I had my abortion?"
That was in Massachusetts, shocker.
Is that the one where you said in your very friendly tone, I was in second grade at the time?
I was in second grade at the time. She said, we were out at an abortion facility in Massachusetts, and she said, "Where were you 20 years ago when I had my abortion?" And 25% of all 40 Days for Life campaigns are led by women who have had an abortion.
Okay.
So, and sometimes it's in front of the very abortion facility they went into. And so, she was saying that directly. That really motivated me as a young man, just to do more. You meet these wonderful people. It's like being at the network here. You just get to encounter so many wonderful souls. And, I've never had an abortion. I haven't been hurt by abortion. And yet, in our country, we have nearly 60 million women that have laid on that table and had it done. And I think there's a responsibility for particularly men to help end this injustice and defend women, not only in our families, but in our culture. And, what she said to me after that was, I probably wouldn't have turned around. I don't know if I would have turned around, but at least I would have known for the rest of my life that I had the chance at the last moment.
Day 15 from Boys to Men, since you mentioned that. Every aborted child has a father. You said, I've been watching fathers driving in and out of abortion facilities for over 10 years now, and my observation is that the body language of those fathers as they drive onto the abortion facility grounds is almost always that of defeat. They do not feel like men on that day.
They do not feel like men on that day, and that is for sure. There is no dignity in solving the problem by driving your girlfriend or your wife in to have an abortion. They don't want to own it. What's sad is those are the actual men that you see. Many times the women are alone,
you don't even see the guy.
You don't even see the guy. He's completely gone. And I have 4 daughters and 2 sons, 6 kids, and where are the men? And now, with particularly this day and age, when we're saying gender doesn't matter, you can think that you're a woman if you're a guy, and if you're a woman and think you're a guy, then it's all great. And all of that is an attack on authentic masculinity and femininity, and there's no service, there's no duty. And there's no moral obligation if you're a man, and I think that is written in their body language. They want to think they're responsible. They want to think that they're doing the right thing, but they shrink when they enter the parking lot of an abortion facility. They'll come out and smoke a cigarette, and you can kind of talk to them, but they're nervous, and they should be, because once it happens, you can't take it back. And you definitely see that on the body language of the women as they leave. There is no relief that was promised. There is no, well, this was really, now I'm confirmed in my decision. There's only anxiety, there's tears, and that's why there's great regret. One of the missions of 40 Days for Life is to begin the process towards post-abortive healing, because we're the first ones that they encounter minutes after the abortion, is complete. And it's also something, you mentioned the tone and the approach. They see that yes, we want to save their baby, but we're also the first sign of mercy for them as they leave the abortion facility. We don't abandon them.
Right. And just before we go, I had to mention that Ramona had in chapter or day 29, Unexpected Welcome, I guess was impacted by Catholic radio, right?
She was. It's a great little plug for EWTN. If you're thinking of not donating, donate, because Ramona was falling away from the church. She was the manager of a Planned Parenthood in Texas, and she turned on EWTN radio and heard Abby Johnson interviewed, and it just struck her, and she began sort of slowly coming back to the church. And then the first 40 Days for Life campaign at her facility showed up, and she walked out the first week and said, I've really been struggling in my conscience, and I need to get out. And our leader, Jerry, nearly died of a heart attack, because that's the last thing you think that the manager's going to say on their first week of the campaign. And yet she did. She resigned a few weeks later and came back into the church on Divine Mercy Sunday that spring.
Perfect timing.
Good timing.
But it only matters, as you say, you need to be visible, you need to be there, right?
You need to be there, and prayer has to be at the center. I mean, our prayer life has to come before our active, and that's the fruit of 40 Days for Life, that you can't run out the door and try to save the world. You have to be praying.
I'm still waiting for those encyclopedias, Shawn. So, okay, thank you so much for you and David B. Wright for 40 Days for Life, and the work of your lovely wives too, because you mentioned how important they are to you.
The real saints.
Shawn Carney, along with David B. Wright, 40 Days for Life, published by Capella Books, available through the EWTN Religious Catalog, EWTNRC.com. Check it out. Check out 40 Days for Life. Join us next time right here on EWTN's Bookmark. Thanks.